Hello, my name is Jonathan Forster, and welcome to the Multi-Story Thinking Podcast. I'm an interior designer and educator. My job is to improve quality of life and productivity by helping people to create beautiful and practical spaces to live and work in. The Multi-Story Thinking Podcast takes an educational slant to the interior design world. So sit back, relax, as we help unravel the mysteries of interior design.
Jamie Wilson is an interior designer and director of hospitality, leisure and culture sponsor of HLM Architects. He's been a member of the HLM team for over 20 years, gaining experience across several sectors including hospitality, education, workplace and residential. Spoke to Jamie over Zoom with my co-host Kay Hanson. In this episode, we discover the importance of verbal communications and how to build your confidence, the value of a strong concept as a thread running through a project, how a multidisciplinary team helps to build relationships across different sectors, and why it's important to keep asking questions.
It's people, isn't it? I think that make any business and any relationship. But
I think one negative I see coming through, particularly the younger generation, is there's a reliance on technology coming out of university, and they're brilliant, can use these fantastic programs and these wondrous things, but it can limit your ability to communicate in the old-fashioned way, should we say?
yeah,
And part of what you do as a designer, you have to sell your ideas. Now, obviously, you sell your ideas through producing fantastic material, but you've also got to be able to verbally sell an idea and communicate with, whether it be your colleagues, someone senior in the business, or a client stakeholder group. And I find that some students coming out, the technology sometimes takes the personality away from them, or can inhibit their personality, when in reality, people deal with people, and quite often when you're selling a design or talking through a design or trying to get some ideas across, it's your personality that helps sells your material as much as your material, And I find that when some of the younger generation coming through, although they're incredibly talented, they're a little bit, and some of it comes with experience, like you say, but they don't seem to be willing or able to communicate as well as perhaps my generation, where the technology was far less advanced, should we say.
Do you think that's always been the case? Do you think that's just a case of confidence?
No, I think you always get different personalities. You get some people that are naturally more confident than others, and that's just life. So it's not criticising anyone in any way, but I think, so coming through when I graduated, and I've always had an air of confidence about me, but I'm more confident when I'm experienced in the subject matter. But when you're a creative person and you believe in something you've drawn, you've kind of got to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
Whereas you see, some of the work that gets produced on the latest technology in the programs is absolutely out of this world in terms of some of the creative output. But clients still deal with people and the way they communicate and converse, and you can have the best design in the world, but they still want it to be sold to them and talked through and communicated.
How do you think you overcome that? Well, I mean, what would you suggest to students who are in that situation, kind of in their last year at uni?
What I found really useful, and this is probably not when I was at university, but more so when I've just graduated, was always try and go to presentations and even watch how other people do it, and ask. If you don't ask to, oh, can I go to a presentation with such and such, just to see, get the experience of what the environment's like, how the stakeholders and clients converse, how your colleague or senior colleagues then choose to present things. I think, and this might be a criticism of the industry, sometimes the younger generation come into a business and with that, if they don't ask for it, they might not get given the opportunity to go to a presentation. And one bit of advice I would give any student coming through and starting out, always ask to be involved. Because sometimes if you don't ask, no one will, it's easy to not be involved. But if you actually go searching for it and ask, can I go to that presentation? Can I just sit in and listen in that meeting? And there may be good reasons why that's not an option, but quite more often than not, it is an option and it can be done. And I think that's how you then start learning the mechanics of relationships in that specific industry. Even doing in-house, you get some that are very, very willing and able to contribute in an internal design review, and others that, for whatever reason, they may not feel confident about what they're saying because they don't think they're experienced enough. But the reality is that anyone sat around a table in a design environment, regardless of their experience, they could all have something to offer that's of equal value to the guy who's sat next to them with 20 years experience, because quite often the younger guys coming through do have really, really good ideas, and they've got this young, fresh approach, and they've been exposed to the latest trends more than the guy with 20 years experience in the office who's got bogged down with sending emails. And one thing I would encourage any student to do, whether it's a placement or whether they're just starting out as a graduate in a new role, is to really think about pushing that extra yard to get involved. I find that the students that we have, whether it be placement or recent graduates, the ones that tend to be more successful are the ones that really are inquisitive and inquire and want to be involved. And even if it's a non-interiors discipline, if it's an architectural element we've been discussing in the office, that there'll be one that comes in and does a little sketch, even though they've probably not been expected to or asked to, but they've actually gone and done it. And all of a sudden that you gain that little bit of recognition, which then gets you the confidence to go and do it again and again and again. And I think it's trying to encourage students to get involved, but sometimes they wait to be asked, whereas actually you go and ask, because quite often the answer will be yes, please come and join us. Sometimes in a busy working environment, if you don't ask, you kind of don't get.
I think it's a confidence thing as well. I mean, I think the more for me, especially, and for when we've worked with the students at university, the more you present and the more you know your work, the better you know your work, the more confident you're going to be. If you know your project, what you're presenting inside out, you've got that back in, that confidence to be able to do it. But the more you present, the more you'll feel at ease doing it amongst your peers or in front of client, and you can just never do enough, really, I suppose. Did you take the traditional route through university?
Yeah, I did a BA Honours in interior design. Then it was the old, it was the whole School of Architecture. It was linked to the old Polytechnic. It's now actually, the course is now University of Lincolnshire School of Architecture.
And it was interior design course that you did rather than interior architecture.
It was run parallel with the architecture course at the time. So we shared all lectures and seminars. We shared with the architects, with the odd exception. But yeah, mine was a 3-year BA Honours.
And then did you move straight into practice? I
did a 9-month work on a demolition site because I couldn't get a job at the time, which I learned a lot off, actually. I had to demolish buildings and how to stand on your own 2 feet on a building site, which was quite interesting with a fresh-faced student coming in. I took a bit of stick. And then my first job was I got employed as the interior space planner for Sheffield Hallam University Estates Department, which at the time was led by an architect called Neil Cameron. He was the head of estates. He was an architect by profession, and I had 2 great years there. I loved it. Real good bunch. Learned a lot, not only about obviously trying to deploy my skills and profession, but I learned a lot about buildings, because you were in amongst all the FM team, the maintenance team, which obviously a large estates department it covers a lot of disciplines and skills. So that was useful. And then literally one day I thought, don't know if this, I need to move on, and I literally sent my CV out to about 30 different practices, just speculatively, and HLM said, come in for an interview. I went for an interview with Sally and Mick, and then 20 years later, I'm still there. I'm director now.
What was your original title then?
Interior designer, and my first job, when I got there, I had to work on South Tees Hospital, which at the time was about a £200 million hospital, and all I did was room-loaded drawings for about a year. But yeah, I was employed as an interior designer.
So you've risen up through the ranks of that organisation to, are you running the interior design element of the business now? Yeah,
so obviously I did X amount of years as part of the interiors team, quite a big interiors team across a number of studios. I was based out of the Sheffield studio. I remember the first few years I was down 3 days a week in the London studio was then in Richmond. Obviously I didn't have any commitments really in terms of family at that age, so I was 3 days a week in Richmond working on a couple of schemes down there. Shortly after that I was in our Glasgow studio a couple of days a week working on a large hospital there as well. The first few years I was HLM, I actually did quite a bit of healthcare. I seemed to fall into that sort of sector, and because I'd worked on one hospital, all of a sudden you're on the next one and such like, and I advanced from room loading. Sally was my boss at the time. She led the team. And then when Sally chose to leave, I got asked to take that role on by the business to run the interiors team as associate director. In 2017, I became director of the practice, responsible for the interiors team, but someone else, Lisa now, is the associate director running the interiors team. And me and her work quite closely together, but to be honest, she's good at what she does, so I don't really have to get involved too a great deal. I'm more about trying to win work for the team now and build those relationships and try and keep the interiors portfolio growing for the practice.
Is there a particular kind of work that you're looking to develop then with that team, or a particular?
Yeah, we've always had a large interiors team ever since I joined HLM, and that team's benefited from either working alongside our architects and architectural commissions, large architectural commissions sometimes. The interior design market and scene, I'll call it, started to gather a bit of momentum and seemed to get more recognition when the likes of Mix magazine started doing the Mix Awards. All of a sudden, clients seemed to be more aware and they were more interested all of a sudden in interiors. They seemed to be, you go for a commission and all of a sudden there was a separate appointment for the interior designer, whereas quite often before it was linked to the architectural commission. And I think it was the rise of some of the publications, FX, Mix, and, socially people were more aware of the environments that they were in, through the 90s and into the 2000s. There just seemed to be far more recognition given for interior designers. And that was just coincidentally around about the time I took over the team. So it wasn't, and all of a sudden we started getting these smaller commissions that were purely interiors focused. And then that allows you to raise your profile. So through various publications and awards, we were suddenly entering sole interior design commissions for interior design awards, not just tagging onto an architectural project. And that was, you saw that a number of interior design practices within architect practices sort of going that way, and profiles started to be raised, and the competition became, quite, it was healthy, good competitions, some really good designers out there, really good design firms, and all of a sudden HLM's interior design team suddenly started getting recognition off their own right for sole interiors commissions. So we've found ourselves working on a variety of projects in terms of scale, from small sort of refurbishment schemes to still large commissions, and then that allowed us to open the door to some other sectors. So rather than working on HLM as an architectural practice predominantly, at that stage, we were involved in quite a lot of public sector work, education, healthcare, defence, custodial. Whereas, and it instigated from our London studio, we started getting involved in more private residential sort of schemes for private developers, which gave the interiors team an opportunity to work on some sort of more high-end sort of residential schemes, which allowed us to raise our profile again, really. So, I mean, we won Interior Design Practice of the Year in 2013, was it? Something like that.
It's when I was still in Sheffield.
Which was a real feather in the, it was a real boost for the team, because, you've got a talented group of individuals who work very, very hard, and to get recognised, it was a great achievement. And again, that allowed us to push on it even further. So now we've got, I think we're still 17 interior designers across the practice. We still work with our architectural team in terms of large architectural commissions. We do a hell of a lot of that still, but we've particularly over the last 6 or 7 years grown into the hospitality sector, something which HLM, 7, 8 years ago didn't particularly have any portfolio in that market. And then through some work we did in sort of conference and banqueting spaces, that led us and got us introduced into some owners and operators. And now, I think last year, hospitality was 12% of HLM's business. The hospitality sector grew on the back of interiors commissions. And what that does, it allows you to build relationships with owners, operators, developers. And as soon as you've got those relationships in place and people understand that the brand, the hotel brand, and you understand the economies behind it all in terms of, making a development feasible, all of a sudden, we've now started getting quite a lot of new build opportunities, because obviously as a firm of architects, we've built new buildings been on the go for 55 years. So we can build buildings, and we know certain markets and sectors now. So so I wouldn't say the interiors team's been passing it on, but through the relationships we've built, those opportunities have now emerged. We've got a strong landscape team, we've got a strong interiors team, and obviously the firm's got a very, very large, successful architectural team. And over the years, we've worked on, we've had the good fortune to work with some great clients on some great projects, and being able to display all those skills as a collective or as individual commissions. And, I think that's something that's always infused me about HLM, because you get a bit of variety.
Does the proximity of working with those different disciplines in the same office change the way you get involved in projects, or the way you might approach a project?
I think having it all under the same roof's got a hell of a lot of advantages. It probably goes without saying that. I suppose it's quite obvious now, I've said it out loud, but what happens is if we have a design forum, we often want each discipline represented if it's at the appropriate stage of a project. We're now trying to encourage that even more with certain sort of design champions in each studio, each sector, each discipline. That's something over the last 18 months to 2 years that we've pushed even more. But one good thing, and this is where I think the interiors team have really benefited on some of the projects they've worked on, is that on interior commissions, we're coming up with a design, but you're sat next to a bunch of technologists. So whereas those projects might not need an architect, the technical knowledge behind it all, you sat with a pool of people that you can draw resource from a technical aspect, which the interiors team have benefited from no end, because not only do you work on that project and you make it the most successful project it can be, but also they pick up that technical knowledge in doing so. So the next project they work on, they've got more knowledge from the outset to then feed into the next project. So I think the biggest benefit, Jonathan, when you're all under one roof is I think it's hard to quantify, but the experience you pick up of your peers in other disciplines is really, really, really beneficial. And I don't think people realise what they've picked up until they're maybe 3 or 4 years later down the line, and all of a sudden they're doing it themselves, or and I think, again, that's something that I've often looked back and thought, the amount you've learnt off others that might not necessarily be interiors related, but all of a sudden it comes together, and there's a big advantage of all being under one roof in that respect.
And I guess it might have an impact on that sense of sharing, or encouraging sharing, and less of a competitive atmosphere if you're all within one company, all going towards the same goal, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, again, HLM, their financial model is there's only one profit centre. So there's never been the sort of regional sort of competitiveness. There's never been the, our budget's this, your budget's, and all this sort of thing. So, and that transpires, that ethos and culture then transpires through how the disciplines work together. So there's no real competition between anyone really, disciplines, sectors, regions, and that makes for a better end product, because you're straight away eliminating a potential cause of disagreement, I suppose, aren't you? You're taking that's never in the equation, so straight away you're on for a better outcome, I think.
What's the process of developing the concepts then? Where's your starting point?
Everyone does things slightly differently. That's something I've always tried to encourage, because each designer's got sort of strengths and weaknesses, and they've got different ways of sort of creating a concept. They've got different ways of expressing and selling a concept. But what we try and encourage the designers to do is actually think, if you have a strong concept, your design naturally takes a better path. What we try and give, although sometimes time is you're not often given the time, but we try and create the time to make people think about a concept, whether it's something that's related to the environment, the locality, the scope, the history of the site, something that they can then use as a thread that's then taken through the design. And regardless of then the budget, this is the most important thing about the concept, because people always, that project's got a bigger budget, that project's not got. Put the budget to one side. If you've got a strong concept, regardless of your budget, you'll deliver something that's meaningful and will represent that concept. Yes, some things cost more than others, and yes, money can technically buy better things, but if your concept's strong, then you will end up with a good design working within the parameters of the project. So we do encourage our designers to have that time to think and create that thread and create that concept. And it differs between sectors, because, if you're doing a primary school, I suppose the principles of forming a concept are the same, but a primary school to a hotel, there's a big difference in perhaps how much the client is expecting a concept, if that makes sense. So don't get me wrong, the concept's important. In a primary school, you'll present a concept to perhaps the head teacher or the key stakeholders, where if you're working in a hotel, you've got the general manager, you've got the brand manager, you've got the interior design manager, you've got the owner, you've got a whole pool of stakeholders that sometimes have different expectations, so that you find that some clients appreciate a concept more than others in certain instances, which as a designer you've got to try and get over that importance. You've got to get over to them the importance of it, should I say. So working between sectors can sometimes make for a different approach to developing your concept, but we encourage our designers to use their best skills. So we don't have a set way of what in the particular mediums we use. Some people are better with computer programs, some people are better with hand sketches, some people are better on SketchUp, some people are better on Photoshop, so we don't prescribe how people sell their designs and how they portray them. We leave that to the individual designer because they know best how they work. I think if you're designing something and you're confident with your design and how you've pulled it together and how you've presented it, then you're going to sell it better, aren't you? And so I was in a meeting this morning where one of our colleagues, she was questioning the next stage of the selling the concepts to produce some visualization, and I think she was getting a little bit worried about having to produce a 3D generated computer image. I said, look, if you're comfortable with a hand sketch, go with a hand sketch, because it's you that's selling it, and it's your idea. And I think that's what the answer she was after. She was getting a bit worried that she'd have to spend, and you end up spending all your time trying to get the computer model right rather than just getting the design right, if that makes sense. That's the drawback of 3D working in the computer environment. Spend a lot of time trying to fine-tune the model rather than fine-tune the design.
Yeah, I think as well there are certain points in a project that are better suited to different techniques. So at the beginning of the project it might be more fluid kind of presentation, where it might be hand sketches. You might even do it in the meeting, whereas further down the line you can start to sort of finalize a concept or a design and move that into some sort of flashy rendering program, or it's good to have a good pool of people that can cross over those different styles, I guess.
Yeah, and you do get individuals in the team that you'll have somebody who's a whiz on the computer, and certain clients will expect a computer generated visual.
Yeah,
you've got to kind of adjust to suit the client's needs, but if you've got the certain members of the team that it's just the way it is, that they're better on the computers than some others, and that's just life. That's not criticism. It's just that's how you need people with different skill sets. So it's about having that balance in your team, really. And
do you think in a larger team like yours, you can allow people to almost become quite niche at what they're good at, rather than in a smaller team? I guess you need to have skills and experience in different things.
It's a good question, because I was thinking about this. I think maybe 10 years ago in the business, I wouldn't say many of the interiors team was quite a broad spectrum, and people weren't necessarily seen as having a niche skill. It was kind of, you can put any person on any project, they're all talented. And what I found over the last 5-6 years is that there's been and it might be the way that the business went to a sector-led approach in 2.5 years ago. And what you found is now that certain individuals are levitating more towards certain sectors, and as much as that can be a great thing because they're building up a really strong skill set and expertise in a sector, it can also have a negative, because if times change and they need to go on another project, then all of a sudden they might find themselves behind the times a little bit, or not up with the latest regs, or not up with the latest guidance in a particular sector. So I'm not saying for 1 minute it's a good thing. What I will say is that I think the clients are now expecting experts in their field in terms of their sector. So we do find ourselves sort of having to, when you say, we've got such and such, their expertise lies in hospitality, their expertise lies in healthcare, their expertise lies in education. And again, through no plan really, it's not a plan, this is happening, it's evolving and just taking its natural route, but we are finding that individuals are starting to become more associated with certain sectors, which I'm not sure is a good thing or a bad thing, because I personally benefited from working on a number of sectors as I went through my career, which I think was a real benefit to me.
Me too.
There's arguments for both of those sort of extremes, really, because I think the term interior designer is such a big catch-all phrase, isn't it? It's a bit like a doctor of what? And whilst it's great to have expertise in lots of different areas, because then you can be flexible and you can allow things to bleed across from one area to another and influence one thing from a different sector. Actually having some really good in-depth knowledge about something is really probably more important, isn't it? But it depends again on the scale of the business.
You're quite right. I think, again, that's why I said I'm not sure it's a good thing or bad thing, because, a lot of what I see in today's world is that the clients are expecting someone across the table who's got that specific experience and skill set in that sector. The only thing it does then as an individual, depending on your age and experience, is if you then move elsewhere and you've only got that skill, you're limiting perhaps some choice and opportunity as you move forward. You could actually use it to your advantage and really make it your only opportunity. There's plenty of people been successful going down that route. So there's kind of no right and wrong, in my opinion. I always felt I'd had a good level of experience working across sector. I think it benefited me and my personality and the way my career developed. I think what I'm finding now, as I've got older, is I found myself, I'm in a couple of sectors, and people don't start looking at me as the person who's got experience in other sectors, because my most recent experience has been specific to hospitality, a bit of higher education and resi.
I've always thought it's useful to come into a sector not knowing very much, and actually coming at it fresh. If you're looking for innovation, that's the way to do it. You're not rolling out the tried and tested.
Yeah.
Some people don't want that, though, do they? They want something they can rely on without any worry. But I think coming at something, I think the designer's skill is to look at a situation, a context, and be able to use their design skill to determine what the next step is, and that might be an area of knowledge they're not really certain about, but that's where you have to go and find the people to work with or research. But it's a tricky one, that, isn't it? Because you think having experience is good, obviously good, but actually coming at it fresh, I think, does open your mind to the opportunities that other people might not be thinking about.
It is a very good point, Jonathan. We found that when one of the reasons why as a business we managed to move into hospitality was the fact that some owners and operators liked the fact that we didn't come with preconceived reputation ideas about hospitality. It was coming with some fresh ideas, fresh approach, and if you scale that back down to the individual, like you've just done there, I think you're right. That I must admit, I quite like going to meetings now with clients where there's myself as the person deemed the experienced one, and if you've got a younger team member with you, they bring this freshness to the approach, to the discussion, the ideas, and clients do really appreciate that. And I think it's just getting that balance right, that you people are given that chance to feel they can contribute without feeling too intimidated by a situation, and that's down to the senior members of the team to help guide them through that sort of process.
Is there anything in your experience that's set you up for that approach then, of kind of mentorship? Did you see that or need that or experience it when you were younger?
Oh yeah, I definitely needed it, 100%. I think I've been lucky enough to work with some really talented people, and both from an interior design perspective and an architectural perspective. So quite often in my early part of my career, I was the interior designer going with the project architect to meetings that was a larger scheme, that the interior design was just an element of an architectural scheme, and we were part of the team, should we say. And I've always found myself willing and wanting to learn off the person next to me, because you don't know it all the time. I don't think you ever do, I think. So there's a couple of projects when I worked on the Arts Tower with Alan Robshaw, who was a very experienced architect in Sheffield, quite a quirky character. Unfortunately, he's passed away, which is really sad. But I learned so much off his approach to just being in a design team meeting, the way he conducted himself. He cracked the odd joke, and he had this ability to soften tension and sometimes create tension as well. But I don't know, I always felt you sat next to someone you can learn off, and I think so. He wasn't directly mentoring me, but he was, really, because I was learning quite a lot off him. He wasn't an official mentoring role. And likewise, when I joined the interiors team with Sally was my boss at the time, and her approach, her management of staff and people, and the way that she created this, like, there was no hierarchy. It was a one-team culture. Everyone chipped in, and that's something that I feel really helped shape my views on things as well. So there's no sort of hierarchy in my mind. It's everyone, we do the best as we can as a team, and we get the job done. And some days you'll have to work late, and some days you'll get off on time, but we all help each other. And that was something that I learned off Sally, my immediate boss, when I joined HLM. She was really, really good at. She was a great designer, but she was really good at managing the team and keeping everyone keeping everyone grounded a bit, and just, we're in this together type scenario. And I think that's something that I've always, I don't know, once you've learned it, and that's it, you learn off the person that you learn. So that, I like to think that that's the way I operate as well. I'm extremely grateful for that experience of working with the likes of Sally, Alan, and some of the senior technical guys in the business who get you out of the trouble every now and again when you've drawn something that might not be that buildable. All of a sudden, you've got a technical wizard who can help you out a little bit, and you learn not to draw it wrong the second time. One thing I would say to any student is that sometimes students come in this great confidence. They come out of university, they've done a great final year show. They've got some amazing designs in the portfolio, and I think sometimes they can be guilty of maybe not listening or respecting too much the experienced guy in the studio where they go and work. Don't underestimate what you're learning, even subconsciously what you're learning, off the experienced guys in the team.
The thing that is striking me about the people that you've mentioned is that they're really personable and approachable and knowledgeable. And I think as a student, if you were to find someone like that in a practice, just cling on to them because they're invaluable, aren't they?
Yeah, never stop asking questions. I mean, I must have asked, I bet Sally used to get fed up with me when I first joined HLM. I remember saying to her one day, I'm sorry for asking all these questions, but if you don't ask questions, you've got to be inquisitive, you've got to want to learn, and you've got to respect the fact that the guy next to you might have been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years, and they generally know a little bit more than you, so just listen to them a little bit. You can then come in with your young creative ideas, and actually the opposite happens, they learn off you. But the way to deal with certain situations, projects, specifics, all these things that you can't possibly have, you just not had the experience when you come out of university. They're the things that, if you take the time, listen to the mentors, the experience, the senior members of the team, and the quicker you do that, the quicker you get on it, and you're away. Then you're building up that knowledge yourself. And sometimes get used to the fact you might have to do a mundane job.
What's the worst job you've done then? I always remember the architects used to complain about having to detail staircases and stuff like that, you know.
It's strange this now, because if you knew me now, you'd say he's not got a technical bone in his body. I always enjoyed the technical side of drawing and trying to make a joinery detail work. I always found that quite interesting.
Me too, actually.
I suppose my role now, I don't get involved as much in that side of things. I think when you say the most difficult job or the mundane job, do you mean a project or a task?
I think a task, yeah.
Task. So, yeah, we changed computer packages as a business, when was it? 7, 8 years ago, maybe longer.
Yeah.
So I was quite proficient in the old package, which actually, funnily enough, still on this laptop. Whereas the new package, when it came in, because my role was different and I wasn't spending as much time drawing on a project, I produced production information with a CAD package. So I never really got fully up to speed with that CAD package. And if my colleagues were listening to this now, they'd all be laughing their heads off. So that transition I found difficult. But in terms of before that, when I was proficient in the CAD package we were using, the sort of room loading and the scheduling out of equipment, perhaps in a hospital or a large school project, or even some of the defence projects when you're having to schedule out certain pieces of specific equipment and whatnot, that you sit there some days thinking this isn't interior design, you know, and I laugh at that when I say it, because you do learn off it though. You learn how rooms are put together. You learn why a space is needed for that piece of equipment. You learn why this room in a defence project needs X, Y, and Z to make it operationally sound for the end user. So you do learn off it, but at the time when you're doing the task, because some of these tasks can be labour, you know, they can be lengthy tasks. You could be on it for a month, 2 months,
or
longer. And yeah, so there's times then when you think, well, hold on a minute, this isn't that creative. Where's my sample boards and where's my sketching and things like that. And but you do, with hindsight, at the time you're pulling your hair out and you're cursing a little bit, but you do learn from it. You learn how projects work in specific sectors and why things are needed. But it's not the best when you're stuck in the middle of one of those tasks.
It's a stretch.
Yeah, and it's almost like the induction, isn't it? Like if you've gone through that, or if you have, I did that 10 years ago. Yeah. My first 12, 18 months at HLM, that's all I did on a hospital project. I remember it well. And it's really important as well because they order all the equipment off it, they price off it, they set the rooms out off. It's a really important task as well. Yeah, you don't want to be getting it wrong.
Just not very glamorous.
No, yeah, that's not a word associated with it. No, definitely not.
No.
Is interior design a glamorous profession, or is that just the top end of the TV that we see? Or
a glamorous profession? I can see why people think it might be, because they'll see things on the television, like I say, and but for me, because I've had an interest in design, I just find it a really interesting profession. I find it a profession that allows you to express yourself, meet loads of interesting people, colleagues and clients. You meet some fantastic people on the journey. It's a profession that's taken me to different parts of the world, which I'm extremely lucky to have had that opportunity. So I've done work out in the Middle East, in Europe, and as well as the countries that make up this island. And I find it a really interesting profession, which allows you to meet great people, design spaces that that people then go on to benefit from and use. And I just find that challenge, the interesting challenge that comes out of all that's fantastic. If you look to me, I'm a 6'2" Yorkshireman. You probably won't tag the word glamorous to me by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, I just think it's a profession that you can get so much fulfillment out of, and you can express yourself creatively, and the amount of people I've met through my career that have gone on to be friends. You've helped them deliver a project, you've helped them see their vision. That aspect of it I love.
I'd like to thank Jamie for taking the time to join me on the podcast. Working as part of the HLM team, Jamie's been able to build a wealth of experience across many sectors. Jamie's advice for students and recent graduates is really invaluable. He's been open to learning from those around him and asking questions to help build his confidence and experience. And this is something we really try to support and encourage with our students at the University of Plymouth. Jamie describes a lifelong learning journey, and you can begin that journey with us at University of Plymouth, where our Interior Design BA Honours course is recruiting. Follow the links if you'd like to find out some more information on how to be a kick-ass interior designer. I'd like to thank Dave Clark from I Am The How for production support and advice in the setting up of this podcast, Kay Hanson for her planning support and co-hosting role for these and our educational podcasts at the University of Plymouth, and Mark Frith for the music. The next episode will feature interior designer and design educator Simon Hamilton. Simon's company, Design Career Consulting, helps designers to create the best CVs and portfolios, as well as preparing them for interview and giving career advice. I'd really like to hear your feedback. Leave a message or get in touch via the website. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Thank you.